Okay, Maria Montessori. There she is, looking like Martin Luther King, except a few physical differences. But she's making a statement in 1906, and she says, I have a dream. She's saying, I have a dream. And that she saw a vision of all of childhood all at once, merging into adulthood. Now, this dream, of course, can be very useful in nature education. And she was sure it was very significant. And she indeed, in 1906, it says 1913, this picture was taken in 1913, but she linked the indoors and the outdoors with the very first school that she invented. So what I'm talking to, the philosophy and history of thought that I'm presenting will be this time more thought than practice, but that's good. It complements what other people have done. And it's the product of 100 years plus of indoor-outdoor education. And I'll try not to do what so many Montessorians do, which is to lapse into esoteric vocabulary. But there's something to the vocabulary that comes out of a school of thought. One of the terms that was used several times by both Jen and Cam was the word norms. And norms, I ask you, Cam, what do you mean by norms? Nature's norms or the child's norms, or both? You probably mean both. So one aspect of studying nature is that there are really two natures, the nature of the child and the nature of nature. And you really have to understand the norms of both to do effective developmental work with children. And I think this is Montessori's contribution for all time. So I'll try to give you a little grasp of it and see if it makes sense to you, practical sense. So I was introduced as a Montessorian arising out of progressive education. And that's a sensitive, I'm a little sensitive about that. This is part of Montessori's misbehavior of being elitist, because yes, we have hands-on learning and we have experiential learning. These are all related to progressive education. We have project-based learning. We have farm-to-table. And we have entrepreneurial studies. And this right now are all hot spots in the pioneers of progressive education in the United States. And really a lot of the private and public schools are latching onto it. But we have something that isn't so, although after this morning's lecture, I don't know if it's fair for me to say this, Cam's lecture, we have a total overview of developmental education in the child and how it relates to the natural world. So you see, we have the early childhood being a hotspot of development, childhood being a little bit slower and latent, but not insignificant, and the adolescent being another hotspot. So when Jen showed first early childhood and then adolescent children, or we call grown-up children, sometimes they aren't grown-up children, excuse me. But when she showed the two what we call parallel stages, I was very impressed, because the adolescents almost need as much significant interaction with the natural world as the little ones. In a way, they're kind of, because of the amount of developmental steam that they have, they can be even considered babies at times. So that was supposed to be funny. So when we look at unfolding nature, that's the other side. Let's call it the green continuum. And in early childhood, from birth to 6, all you have to do is put a little child like this one in the middle of a natural environment, and you don't teach that child. That child explores. That child picks up something small, has a fascination for it, and turns it around, examines the shape, and absorbs some aspect of its organization. We call that that absorption the absorbent mind. This is the mental strength of a young child. It's a photographic memory of what they experience. Sometimes goes into the unconscious, sometimes is at the conscious level. I'm sorry. The elementary years, we have another aspect that we touch on for development, which is the imagination. The elementary child has the capacity for wonder and for seeing that which is not in their immediate space, namely the universe. I'm giving you the summary, and then I'll break it into details. This is our developmental green continuum. Then in early adolescence, we divide adolescence into 12 to 15 and 15 to 18. In early adolescence, the child has the capacity to collaborate with the natural world, and we've picked the farm environment as a tool for a very coherent reason. And then later adolescent mind and spirit is very interested in how to save the world. And I think you know what I mean when you see so many kids involved in ecological endeavor and in different countries. And similar to the Swedish picture that you saw just a minute ago, these children have incredible enthusiasm about working internationally. Starting with their local, you have to have the local and before you can go to the global. I'm going to have to take a drink of water. Another word that was used today is systems. I was really interested in Cam's idea of vocabulary. Jen used the word systems. What are we talking about? Which system? The psychological, physical system of a growing child, or the natural system of a comprehensive ecological environment? It's really an ecological place. And also system in terms of interaction, that is with children and space, has a dynamic organic complexity that we cannot predict. We cannot design the ultimate comprehensive system because every system is unique. The natural world is unique, every individual is unique, and we Montessorians buy into uniqueness on both sides. So I'm going to do something that I developed for an international congress in Portland called Guided by Nature, paralleling the developmental norm. Norm comes from the Latin norma. It means right-angled carpenter's rule. So norma means, as opposed to average, the natural convention of all in nature and all in the child. What can we count on as universal? Okay, so I'm going to take the plant as a way of showing the plant and its parts as a way of showing the universal nature of childhood to adolescence. Look at that beautiful statement. That's a Montessori statement. The origins of experience in nature in early childhood, guided by the child's senses, sensitivities, and joy of exploration, shows a deep attachment and love of the natural world. And the Montessori idea is that exists innately in children. We don't have to foster it or teach it. And if we do the right thing at every stage of development, we will get an incredibly well-cultivated bond with nature that it will last for the rest of that child's life. So here we are, the connection with the environment. These are children under 6, and here we are with the kinds of things they do. This pointing to detail, this planting aspect. Don't forget that children under 6. In fact, there's all kinds of movements for this in inner city schools. where needy populations are clamoring for contact with the natural world, which is planting gardens, very small, 3, 4, 5-year-olds planting gardens as a community. And the other, by the way, we talked a lot about obesity this morning, but there is another very vicious health threat, and that is anxiety or trauma. And we see that the natural world is one of the compelling healing aspects for trauma. And believe me, I started a charter school in one of the most challenging neighborhoods in Cleveland. That's where I live. And these children are hurting to the point where they can't organize their thought, they can't socialize, they can't stay in their classrooms, they're so active. And the only place that they can really go to rejuvenate their spirit is the out of doors. And this is, so I think anxiety and trauma are a little more subtle than obesity. You don't see it, but it's there, and there are more and more people that are aware of it. So one aspect, and even this is hard to convey to teachers, is that the walk is a critical piece of addressing the encounter with the natural world, and that you don't walk fast. You walk very slow, and you let children meander. And in fact, this is a Montessori statement. We must walk with the child, not the child with us. In other words, the compelling pulling of the hand and taking people through a natural environment, young people, little people, through a natural environment is just dead wrong. So it's a simple idea, but I think it's a vital point that the walk, we are bipedal creatures, and we have hands which are free, and we should be able to take apart the environment around us, especially when our sensitivity tells us that we can use our hands for discovering the little pieces of nature. The other aspect, which I think was mentioned by Kahn, is the idea of engagement. And engagement is everything to our system of education. Because if a child isn't engaged, if they're doing something that's coerced, that they're just told to do, they aren't really learning the same way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Shikshit Mahai concept of flow, if I have time. You know, I have a merciless mandate to get done at 11:15, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I started 3 minutes late. Okay. Are you listening, Nilda? Okay, so this is one of our typical terrace treatment. Now, a terrace is not a sandbox or sand center or what, and it's not a grassy area. It is actually an intermediate space where students can take their work and go outside, like a deck. The Montessori Shishi word is terrace. And by the way, there are 22,000 Montessori schools in the world. So whatever we do with nature education and conceptual understanding of nature with a growing child gets out there to 22,000 schools in 125 countries. So this is a typical terrace solution. I'll show you a couple more. And then what we really value as far as the idea of engagement, what we really value, and you can see this child, I don't know how well you can see it, this child's looking at a praying mantid, is it mantis? You can see I need a little more nature education. But this child is engaged. That's the whole idea. It's a moving, living thing, and engagement is the product. Now that's also a simple idea, and sometimes we call it normalization, an ugly word, but it goes back to that idea of norm, that it is the norm of the young human to observe nature and be focused by it, especially if they're touching it. So I'm going to give you a really rapid overview of the history of Montessori. Here's the trauma of the Cloister School in 1911 that inherited 60 children who are newly orphaned by an earthquake in Messina in southern Italy. And so they come to this Montessori school in Rome, and miraculously, they are normalized. That is, their norm self emerges over the chaos and dread and trauma of that earthquake and losing their parents, except for one boy that made the papers. His name was Bruno. And a little girl. This is the power of social development. Yes, the children are very social. They're little humanitarians at this age. And this child, this girl, whose name I didn't catch, comforted this boy every day to the point where he stopped crying. Now, the terrace concept, that is the intermediate space just outside the classroom, and by the way, we Montessorians think that the real impact of nature and its implications for young children is really proportionate to how close that environment is to their exit, their means of egress at their school. I know. And so here in Australia, this is, by the way, is 1914 at Blackfriars School. A very conscious attempt was made to create the terrace and to have the gardening work right outside of the schoolroom, especially effective for young children who like to work as close to where they find their work as they can, toddlers in particular. I should have had a glass, because I'm doing that right over my computer, drinking. So here's the out of doors again, mainly to see also what's happening around the school. Like this is a milkman bringing milk to these children. They all come out to greet the milkman. Or this is more gardening around a fountain. And this is just a circle lesson. But the outdoors enhances the absorbent mind and the learning capacities. And this has actually been proved by some of our research, that there's a dynamic increase in knowledge getting, about 14% proportionate to time spent outdoors. This is an interesting healing story. This is a Montessori school with an outdoor environment. The children are orphaned from the World War I in Brussels. The school is in Paris. The adults who are making the materials for the classroom with the children, they are wounded soldiers from Brussels as well. But isn't it interesting that already Montessori is acknowledging that the goal of the prepared environment indoors or the prepared environment outdoors is to soothe pain and to find joy. Here's a very famous saying from a woman named Margaret Waltuck, who in the 30s started Montessori-directed schools by Montessori. And there is no separation between indoors and outdoors. It's very interesting. It should be seamless, and children should be free, not to have to get a pass, not to have to excuse themselves, but they should be free to go in and out. And also, you see, this is in Berlin, 1920. These children are communicating with the outdoor children and the outdoor activities. That the very existence and easy access of indoors increases child communication, and children become very enamored with their setup, the depth of being indoors or being outdoors and communicating together. Also, what all of you are probably ready for right now, the outdoors is conducive to napping. It's dancing, as shown in this bottom picture, and lots of gardening, and this is just work in the out of doors. So it's not just doing planting and restoring your grounds that's very interesting to children, but the luminosity of the sun is good. And the, Cam, you didn't smile when I said sun is good. So, and the idea of movement of air and movement of plants and animals in the outdoors enhances all work, not just outdoor work. And you can bring outdoor work in. This is Haus der Kinder in Vienna. Also Haus der Kinder in Vienna. There's other work than planting, like building things for the garden, that are very engaging. And then the architect of this Haus der Kinder, Franz, I think his name is Franz Singer, actually designed indoor terraria that were placed in every classroom, showing that it's as important to have outdoor environments in the indoors and study of nature in the indoors to match the study of nature out of doors. Now, you see that Moore and Costco on the top? You see that, guys? They really introduced the naturalized outdoor environment to Montessori. It's very important to me to have met them and to know them, because although many Montessori schools, as you can see, historically naturalized their playgrounds, they didn't have the conscious awareness that Robin and Nilda brought to the garden. And so if we, and also the simplicity, like creating a beanstalk or just a quiet place, a niche for young children, is a way of addressing the absorbent mind, and that's really important to be able to find places where you can go. And sometimes and nobody can find you. And some adults have that need too. Am I right? So right across the street at the Follow the Child Montessori School, there is a garden. This, I believe, is the theater, right? Did I get that right? I had to do this. You don't know? That's all right. But Montessori schools today are still doing this, and Robin and Nilda did the Montessori School of Raleigh outdoor environment. Now they're doing Follow the Child outdoor environment, and I hope all of you who are from North Carolina. I'm just moving here, so I'm a big supporter, but I think you should consider their wisdom. And this is another nice structure. I think that's a combination greenhouse and tool shed. Is that right? It's another beautiful structure, and that's another. I don't know if the parents help build everything. So that notion that Cam brought up, that communities are built around construction of natural environments for children, is so true. And Robin and Nilda do that with every job, I believe. I don't have a lot of time, so I only have, we've got to be very careful here. I want to talk about the work of Csikszentmihalyi, another psychological aspect. Remember I said engagement was very important, specifically concentration. Concentration is mental strength. So natural world, it has its challenges and it has skills. And if the skills are taught, as was so demonstrated, this is Csikszentmihalyi's Mihai Csikszentmihalyi is Romanian, and he was at the University of Chicago when he came up with this theory. We use it all the time. When challenges and skills are matched in the outdoors, there's no stopping of the arousal and control that it produces in children. And we call that flow, that total engagement, concentration, with the hands working. And here's flow on the indoor environment, and you see this is from France. This child is sewing a button on a bag, and the nodding of the head is oblique, as is the hands and the thread. And look at the pursed lips. Now, these are all characteristics of flow in young children. Another aspect, although concentration can take different forms, this is a sensorial exercise of geometric shapes, terribly important for the appreciation of work out of doors. And out of doors, the other excitement, which I think Cam demonstrated over and over again, is that children work together, even if their social skills are not as developed as they would be if they were older. They work together, and there's just total excitement. Now, the other aspect of Nature Heals, I took Csikszentmihalyi's 6 elements, which do, I think they do include, no, they don't include obesity, but they do include physical health. They do include vital thinking and engagement. They do suggest that you will have a continuous calling, vocation not as job, but vocation as calling to the work, close relationships, involvement in community, and wisdom. This is the healing process of nature that he isolates and generalizes it with the word well-being, touched upon by Jennifer's presentation this morning. It's so true. So now we've gone from the seed to the stem, and the stem is the elementary years, and I know there's only one of you in the audience, but this is for you. And this is a famous Montessori quote talking about the interrelatedness of the natural world and the universe. And this is a 6-year-old. Now look at that 6-year-old. Using a Rachel Carson quote, this is where wonder is born, in this imagination of the child, and it's a lifetime characteristic. And look at the eyes, look at the anticipation of a great lesson. So the great lesson that we tell in the beginning is called the story of the universe. Well, if you bring up the universe to a 6-year-old in the beginning, before your mother was born, before your father was born, before there was a planet, before there was a solar system, before there was a star, before there was matter, there was. Now that gets a 6-year-old really excited. It gets me excited every time I do that. I hope I can do that when I'm 70. That's next 1.5 years from now. The concept of a benign universe to a 6-year-old is really important. This universe is creating a natural world that is beneficial for us. So that, and our Montessori teachers teach the story of the universe. So when I heard storytelling in Cam's lecture, my ears perked, because our whole elementary deals with what we call great stories or sweep stories, sweep fables, you name it. We call them all kinds of things. But they pull the child's sense of appreciation for what's around them into a coherent, organized, integrated system. And I'm going to show you how that system works in just a minute. This is a timeline where they're studying the life on Earth from the very first life on Earth to the arrival of humans. The story of life on Earth also creates that independence that we saw in the natural world. They are so excited by the fact that they can learn about life millions and millions of years ago. They just keep on working, and there's no stopping. And of course, behind them is a world map, so that the very geological story that they're learning about in geological time applies to all of the world. So we give them keys. These are called classified nomenclature. These are card materials that present the keys to periphera, that is the sponge. And we give them these, and we also use these in the children's house, that is the under 6 environment too. But you get a key, and I know that many of the gardens use this, and then you try to find it in reality and in books as well. So it's called the key lesson. So you go out, you get your key, and you go out of doors, and you find what you need to verify that key and to make and understand the key better. The other aspect of the elementary that's really important is the interconnectedness of life in the forest. That's not a constructed forest on school grounds. I mean, it's a real forest. And and you can read the quote. My wife said, whatever you do, David, don't do your typical reading of the quotes. So I'm not going to read it. You read it. But what the quote basically is saying is that all knowledge is interconnected, and that all of the life in the forest has a relationship to other life and to other inanimate objects. So systems thinking, when you say systems, CAM, I'm picking on CAM, it gets the audience interest up a little bit. When you say systems, are you talking about the web of relationships? Rather than focusing on the details of your space, what are the web of relationships for the whole? Montessori saw the whole of development, the whole child, and now we have to look at the whole of the natural world and decide how everything interrelates. That increases meaning multifold. If you know for example, that a stone, a sandstone, is part of the history of the soil in your region. Wow, that's a big connection. And some of this can't be taught. It has to be, they ask about it, and the teacher has to have the mentality that it's all interrelated. And the ultimate web of life, this was Montessori's drawing, but there's several people who are theorists about the web of life, but the ultimate connection of energy, land, air, water, animals, plants, and then you see the human world converging on the natural world. This is the issue of our time, that the natural world and the human world, which Montessori called supranature because it's usually built on top of the natural world, have to find a harmony of some sort. And in studying nature, it's not just becoming bonded with the natural world, it's also understanding your relationship with the natural world. So there's all kinds of people. It has to be international, all kinds of countries, all kinds of cultures that have to make this connection to the natural world. So what I'm showing here are those stories that I talked about. And I'm talking at the end, the ecological unity of all mankind. And then in between are the disciplines. What you see there are biology, chemistry, geology, geography. The disciplines are for a purpose, to connect the natural world to our purpose, our mission on the planet, which is to save the world. And I think that is a comprehensive view, educational view, that is being done many places, but Montessori is doing it particularly well. There are the stories, the disciplines, and then the ultimate, what is a discipline for? It's for understanding where we live and how we can make the world better than the way we found it. Now, if you take this concept, this is an elementary structure, an elementary beneath the surface. We don't go around saying, are you improving your universe today? We don't say that to the children. It's an underlying structure that helps organize our space. It's an overview that helps make everything come together so that the student can discover the interconnections. But we also do something very interesting. We take this circle of interrelatedness, and the next stage for the adolescent is the farm as a whole. So we go from the whole, which is intellectual, to the whole, which is physical and practical. Does anyone want to venture why a farm serves the same purpose as the chart in presenting the whole? I always do this with every audience. I want to make sure that you're following my line of thought. Can anyone say why the circle is the circle of the stories of the coming of life, the story of the universe, generating disciplines from origin? The further back you go, the cosmologists say, the further forward you can go. You can think future. So what's a farm? Where only 2% of Americans are living on farms. Why a farm? Okay. And you might get I have a little prize here. So you want to say it, stand up and say it to everybody because I think you know it because you have a big smile on your face. Everything from planting the seed, growing the seed, making the harvest, and composting the leftover. So when you plant the next seed, it's even better. Why are you so confident? Oh, it's none of my business. I get it. All right, so we go to the adolescent. So we went for the seed and the root for early childhood. We went to the stem for elementary. Now we go to the leaves, and we refer to them as the leaves of peace because of the mission that adolescents take to. And so, and this is a universal quote: "We are all a single organism, one nation. Becoming a single nation, we have finally realized the unconscious spiritual and religious aspiration of the human soul. And this we can proclaim to every corner of the earth." Now, that is an all-time famous quote. Most Montessorians who teach the adolescent know that. That's the cry to get out there and understand that there is a spiritual and, well, I hate to use the word, it's not very fashionable, religious nature to young adolescents. They are very spiritual in their aspirations. They have strong aspirations that are not materialistic. It's hard to find them, but when you do, you're really blessed. So this is Sweden, life in the open air. This is also Sweden, animals grazing on the land, so there is a network. There is a network of knowledge that this gentleman described. And this is the older adolescent learning the practical skills that are needed for the land. And this is Mahatma Gandhi praising Montessori, which you can read if you want. I'll talk long enough. Here's another work that we're doing, land-based work that we're doing in Kenya. Remember that it's not just growing our own food, selling our own food, valuing the sources of food, understanding food systems. It's also what is our mission in relation to land-based work. So Ethel Merman would be proud. There's no culture like agriculture. And we have a concept that we use all the time called pedagogy of place. How can the farm be a teaching machine? Every aspect of farming has a teachable moment. Every square inch, from the harvesting of food to the cooking of food to the selling of food, which is entrepreneurial. So I want to show you some farms, and this will be the end of my presentation. So this is the farm I started in Ohio. You notice the photovoltaic cell, so energy is a big part of farming. This is a bioshelter, which also has has a wood-burning stove, which makes it renewable energy, and a great lesson because you have to physically get that wood to realize how valuable energy is. There's the farm manager he organizes the kids to get the wood. A composting toilet, we used to applaud when somebody used it because nobody wanted to use it. So if we were all in the region of the composting toilet, there was an ovation for those that came out. And of course, that was discouragement. That was really discouragement. Working on the land, planting the crops, adolescent in flow, in that engagement. Now, adolescents, as you know, have trouble with finding engagement and concentration, but not on the land. Very few. They all blend. Good students, bad students, antisocial folks, you can't spot them. They all blend into the community. So here are some other farms. Here's one in Sydney, Australia. This was a civilized area between two outbacks. Again, this is the human-made aspect, the supranature in relation to the natural world. Here's another one in Sweden, where we train teachers. And we do about 30 teachers a a year. And you can see that, again, there's the human side and the natural world side by side. We always look for training areas where there's human cultivation and human work, and alongside a natural world. I can't show you the beautiful natural world. I haven't shown you either time because I was really worried about going over time, and my time is, I have 2 more minutes. So this is South Africa. This is the first land school in South Africa. Again, they have the natural world behind the human world. That's the beauty of farming. That's the interior. That's some of the natural, the tending of goats in the natural setting. So Montessori's ambition is really clear. We are the world. We think of ourselves as international. We were internationally born, as you saw in the history. We have 125 countries, 22,000 schools, and that gives us dimension in looking at the human condition and educating all of the humans. So the self, the family, the school, the neighborhood community, the town and regional community, the world community, and finally the universe. No small task. I believe it can be done, this comprehensive learning in the natural setting, and I hope to be able to tell you more about it when I have an hour instead of 45 minutes. Thank you very much.